When a good person dies, family and friends gather for many reasons. Life has touched them with deep grief, and they need each other's company for their own comfort. Just to be together, to look into friends' faces and see the common expression of hurt takes away the loneliness of their feelings and draws their hearts together in the blessed healings that men and women can give to one another. At such time, our various faiths, which sustain us separately, come together in a harmony which crosses all creeds. I welcome you here this morning. I'm Reverend Dr. Judith Wright. I'm the minister of the UU Society of Laconia. We are gathered here this morning by death, the end of a good person's life, the life of Robert Currier Stanley. Though we will mourn, for mourn we must, let this also be a time of remembering the person Bob was. And let this be a time for affirming the kind of life which he lived. Let this then be not so much a time of brooding upon his death, but a time for celebrating a human life, the life that was Bob's life. How true are the words of Khalil Gibran, who wrote, "When you are sorrowful, look again into your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight." By our presence here this morning, we pay tribute to Bob, who was an important part of our lives, who was dear to us. We come to show our love and respect for the person he was, and we've come together to show our love and support for Bob's family, especially for Jerry, his wife of 38 years, their adult children, Stacy, Robin, and Matthew. And let us hold in our hearts Bob's grandchildren, Alexis and Julia, William and Hayden. Bob had a close, long life, loving relationship with his brother, Gene, and who is with us this morning, as well as his wife, Lois, and their sons and their families. We have come together this morning to show our love and support for Bob's family. Their loss of Bob is sharp and deep, we know. And so we have come together. It is right and fitting that we have come together, for a human life is sacred, and so is its ending. We'll now have the lighting of our chalice. I ask, in our Unitarian Universalist tradition, it's traditional for us to light a chalice before every service, so we invite you to stand. Sherry. I invite you to say with me the words in your order of service for the lighting of the chalice. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love. We light our chalice in honor of the love and life of Robert Currier Stanley. So we're going to sing now, or have now, a piece of music. Bob was a Jimmy Buffett fan all of his life, and you're invited to stay standing if you wish. And however the music speaks to you, you can sway, you can clap your hands, you can put your hands in the air. Just pretend that you're at a Jimmy Buffett concert.
this one particular harbor, so far yet so near, where I see the days as they fade away, finally disappear. Then I think about the good time down in the Caribbean sunshine. In my younger days I was so bad, laughing about all the fun we've had. I seen another below spin, fix a different ocean beach cousin. Listen to the drummers and the night sound. Listen to the singers make the world go round. Lakes below the mountain flow into the sea like oil supplied to canvas. Oh, how they permeate through me. But there's this one particular harbor, sheltered from the wind, where the children play on the shore we stay, and all the sea a most mysterious harbor, so far yet so near, where I see the day when my hair is so gray and I finally disappear. Yara te natura me aroha te aone. 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 Yara te natura me aroha te
Please be seated. You can see some slides of them, Jerry and Bob, at Jimmy Buffett concerts downstairs after the service. So I now get to say a eulogy after all of that. So a year ago tomorrow, on June 12th, we lost our beloved Bob. And with Bob's passing, we can no longer hear his voice, enjoy his stories, share in his daily life. but he is still with us in spirit and in memories. For those of us here this morning, our lives are mingled with shared memories of Bob, some of them sad and some of them very funny. Bob was born in Burlington, Vermont, to Robert and Marguerite Stanley. He graduated from Norwich Free Academy in June of 1961, where he played sports, including baseball and football, where a friend said, "Bob was the glue that held us together." After high school, Bob spent 4 years in the Air Force. Later, he would spend years exploring the Gulf of Mississippi, where he received his BA from the University of Southern Mississippi. Next, he moved to New Hampshire, where he spent the rest of his life. Now, certain themes ran through Bob's life, and a central theme was his love for his family. He spent time with his children, Stacy, Robin, and Matthew, and cherished his time with his grandchildren and nephews. And here we find his deep love for his brother Gene. All through Bob's life, Gene and Bob were really close and loved each other deeply. When Bob found Jerry, he knew he had found the love of his life. They were married for 38 years. Another area of importance in Bob's life is his maintaining his friendships across a lifetime. Even friends he made before high school that he played sports with remained his friends throughout his life. Friends from across his lifetime would call him up on the phone and chat as if they had just seen each other last week. And they were asking Bob throughout his life to share more of himself with them. Bob was gracious and generous to all who reached out. Bob was easy to have as a friend. He radiated warmth and acceptance, had an easy laugh, and was a good listener. Importantly, there was always kindness in his heart. A closely related third theme to Bob's life would be, of course, his love of sports. Football, baseball, even golf, which was not his favorite sport. Of golf, Bob would laughingly say, "Hit 'em till you're happy." Coaching football and baseball were two great passions in his life. While still working in the insurance industry, Bob found time to coach football at Bishop Brady in Concord. That coaching experience at Bishop Brady awakened in Bob the heartfelt connections he had had with his own coaches in his youth. For this reason, Bob decided to get his master's degree in guidance counseling. At the same time, Jerry was studying for hers in education. Happily, he and Jerry received their masters on the very same day, and that was big because they both were working full-time while studying their coursework. Bob served middle schoolers in the Bow community for 13 years, and during that time, he coached both baseball and football. A funny incident from this time is when Bob was a guidance counselor at Bow, he would sometimes go visit Jerry, who taught at another school, and vice versa, she would sometimes go visit him. One day, a middle schooler who knew both Jerry and Bob asked a middle school teacher, in all seriousness, "Is Mrs. Stanley dating Mr. Stanley?" And most recently, he coached football at New Hampton School. Bob wore his New Hampton championship ring all the time, proud of the team he helped to coach that won the New England Prep School Championship in 2015. Now, another important theme for Bob's life would be his love of woodworking. He loved to refinish furniture. And I have here the lovely walking stick that he gave me close to the last time I saw him. In the slideshow after the service, we can also see a number of Bob's amazing carvings. Wood carvings became more and more a pastime for Bob later in life. He would spend, as Jerry wrote, many hours in the zen of wood carving, creating beautiful birds and wildlife, while listening to music and singing songs familiar from his time in college when he and Jimmy Buffett were roommates and having a swinging time. Jerry shared with me that an annual fun event for them as a couple was attending Jimmy Buffett's concert later in life. In terms of his wood carving, Bob would say he was creating toothpicks. That really wasn't close to the truth. He was truly gifted in this art. Bob most likely came into his love of wood carving when he lived as a youth for a while with his uncle John, a wood carver. The final theme I will call some other important parts of Bob. Here we find the influence of Bob's grandfather on Bob. His grandfather was a fly fisherman and an outdoorsman, as was Bob. Bob enjoyed the outdoors, especially fly fishing and duck hunting. Whenever Bob went hunting for ducks with his beloved dog Ginger, he would tell Jerry, "Don't worry, honey, they're all safe." If you knew Bob only for a little while, you understood that Bob loved cookies. Ann Ward, who is providing the catering for us today, has prepared a number of different kinds of cookies in Bob's honor. I think Bob would have been very happy. Knowing Bob, we also understood that he really wanted to be a cowboy, driving those cattle across some lonesome plain. He would, of course, be a kind and loving cowboy with Jerry by his side and his favorite dog traveling along beside them as they wander the range where seldom is heard a discouraging word and the skies are not cloudy all day. In this eulogy for Bob, I know full well that I have shared with us only my own personal glimpses of Bob's sacred life, and it's been an honor to do so. In closing, I will lift up these words, adapted from a poem by Helen Keller, which I believe Bob would agree with wholeheartedly. Passing through, sometimes happy, sometimes blue, glad I ran into you. Tell the people that you saw me passing through. What we have once enjoyed, we can never lose again. A sunset, a mountain, or the sea. We will ever love their beauty. Hold the vision in our hearts. Our memories will always hold the key. Whomever we have loved becomes a part of us. A loved one is truly never lost. They still laugh and work and play. We remember them that day, that way. Love can never lose, whatever be the cost. Rest in peace, dear Bob. And now we will sing a song in honor of Bob. You can sing softly. If you know the words, take me out to the ball game. He would love that, I'm sure. So now we have a time for sharings, and I have the first one. It's not on your order of worship, but it's by Bob Lantrop, high school teammate and longtime friend of Bob's. Here are his words. I have struggled trying to figure out what set Bob apart. The essence is that he put the interest of others ahead of himself. He was a great athlete, for sure, in both football and baseball. But most importantly, he sought to encourage people and bring them together. I would say that on the team, he emphasized teamwork rather than focusing on his own importance. Bob drew people together later on as well. He sought me out as well as many others and sought to encourage them even years after NFA. From another classmate, Bob wrote, "He was the glue that held us together." And from another, "Oh, the depth of kindness in that man." And now I invite Stacy and Robin to come forward to give their sharing.
It's funny the things you miss once you realize a person is gone. Sometimes, somehow details become more clear and mix in with the big moments. I never really thought about how much I love my dad's voice until I knew I would never hear it again. My dad rarely called my sister and I by our given names. To him, we were Shug and Toot. Every conversation with him would begin with, "Hey, Shug." Once when I was in high school, he apologized for calling me that in front of my friends, thinking it may have embarrassed me. But the reality is that I hadn't even noticed. I was and always will be Shug. I just no longer have anyone on this earth to call me that. He would always make me laugh while mimicking the Swedish chef from Muppets, or Pepe Le Pew, or Elmer Fudd. I'm dating myself with some of those. I also love remembering listening to him singing along with Gordon Lightfoot or his old college buddy, Jimmy Buffett. His voice will always hold an unexpectedly huge place in my memories and in my heart. Growing up, my dad and I were often told that we looked alike and had the same mannerisms. We were also told if you were both in a room, we would know you were father and daughter. Our outlook on life and strong work ethic was also very similar. Every job is honorable was one of his many what we call dadisms, that one being more serious than most. Some others I loved were, the chances are slim and none, and Slim went to Texas. You were also in a high-speed wobble if you were especially frantic. When rain was coming down exceptionally hard, most often used in reference to Hurricane Camille in 1969, which has an endless amount of stories in itself, or other heavy Mississippi rainstorms, he would say, "It's raining like you're pouring water out of a boot." At mealtime, his song to chastise me as a child was, "Stacy, Stacy, strong and able, get your elbows off the table," which would always elicit a groan from me at the time, but now makes me smile. So many memories full of laughter and love. So many life lessons and skills, both academic and sports related, that he passed on. So many dadisms and stories that will continue to be used and told. He may not be with us physically, but he will always be here in so many people's hearts and everyday lives. You did good, Dad, and I love you and will miss you forever.
Yeah. For dadisms. I got one nerve left and you're on it. If something is slippery, it's slicker than snot.
And if somebody pissed him off or
He's
threatened his girls,
instantly slick.
I'm gonna jerk a knot in his throat.
Oh yeah. And he'll call him slick.
And he'll call him slick. You're not your throat slick.
So I wrote my thoughts because I thought it would be easier to get them down and I can concentrate on the words without breaking down. I hadn't really planned on speaking until 2 days ago when I woke up in the middle of the night and just decided I needed to talk. So excuse the mishmash of my thought process. I mean, I've only had a year to prepare. But this wouldn't come as the slightest bit of a surprise to my dad, seeing as the majority of my middle and high school years led him to much exasperation. My birth name is Robin Courtney Stanley, and I absolutely always loved that I shared my initials with him. However, I was not known as Robin to my dad, unless, of course, he was using it when he was mad at me, and rightfully so for me doing something stupid, circling back to his exasperation. From Dad, I was anointed a few affectionate nicknames, mostly sweet girl or darling, when he was hugging me. But I will always love that, like my sister who came before me, he gave me a special nickname too. To me, I would forever be Tootie, or Toot for short. I always hoped to remember his voice, which I loved like Stacy did, saying, "Hey, how's it going, Toot?" Unfortunately, the origins of that special name will forever be a mystery because when asked, he couldn't remember how he came up with it to begin with. But it was my name, and it was from his heart, and it was to me from him, and I cherish it. My dad was a master at colorful language, which Stacy can agree we both have inherited. He was wickedly funny and absolutely loved, and I loved when he would laugh at something. He had a fantastic laugh. He always had such a great sense of humor, and I always loved being able to make him laugh because I kind of felt proud of myself, because if you find somebody funny, you did something good if you make them laugh. A few quick memories. I was born in March, apparently during a car race he was watching on TV, and without fail, every single year on my birthday, he would remind me that he never got to find out who won the car race. When I was young, maybe 13 or 14, Dad and I were playing catch in the yard at their house in Bow. To Dad's dismay, I am not sporty, but he kept telling me, "Toot, you've got a good arm," and he still talked about it years later. He goes, "You have a better pitch than Matt." "But Matt, you were like 11, I'm sure you have a better pitch arm by now." When I was a senior in high school, I was in the play Grease, back in the good old days, you know, where they let you smoke as a teenager on stage indoors. It's not something I was proud of, but I was so smug smoking on stage back then out in the open. To get into character. I remember it like yesterday. After the show, Dad came up behind me, put one hand on the back of my neck, stuck his fingers in, and leans over and whispers in my ear, "I saw you inhale, Toot." Needless to say, he got his point across, and my head was down. Dad and I were playing Uno one day when I was young, and he was beating me, and he exclaimed so proudly, "Chew my dirt." And I said, "Dad, I think you meant eat my dust." And he said, "Yeah, that too." Dad was always a guy's guy, being into sports and hunting and fishing and beer, of course. If any of you know him, you know that. I remember teasing him about having had the bad luck of having girls. I would jokingly apologize that I wasn't a boy since I was his second and last chance after having my sister. He would always just laugh and hug me and say, "Toot, I wouldn't have it any other way." But no matter how tough an exterior or masculine he was, when it came to his girls, he was always free and open with his hugs, his words of affirmation, and his words of affection towards us, never missing an opportunity to tell us how much we were loved. And as I go through life, one thing I will never have to doubt is how much he loved me and my sister. So cheers to you, Dad. I love you so much, and I miss you more than you know. That's it.
We'll now hear from Aaron Stanley.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Yes, I'm Eric. I'm the oldest of Jean and Lois's boys. Needless to say, it's hard to try to encapsulate a life experience of knowing Uncle Bob into this sheet of paper. But, you know, the best that you can do is kind of snapshots. And so, actually, just taking just a couple moments to just sort of conjure in your own mind some snapshot of an interaction with Bob that you've had. Understandably, the image, a couple of different images come to mind to me, and they always make me smile. It's not of any particular incident or experience, even though there are lots of them, but it's really, for me, his smile. And you know, it's hard to encapsulate things, but I was thinking about this. The essence, for me, in some ways, is that twinkle in his eye, and that smile, but that twinkle. And there was this undercurrent, sometimes not an undercurrent, of mischief and play in everything about him. So this is my attempt to try to capture just a little bit of what Uncle Bob meant to me. So when I was growing up, Uncle Bob was the ultimate cool. He seemed, you know, I knew that, like, when Dad would say, you know, Uncle Bob's coming to visit, it was going, oh, this is going to be fun. Yeah. I mean, he just sort of brought that spark, that energy to him wherever he went. He had this sort of devil-may-care attitude about him, this, you know, daring-do kind of thing, almost kind of a swashbuckling kind of thing. And that's sort of a reference to Jimmy Buffett, which I'll get into. And there were stories, obviously, lots of stories. If Uncle Bob he was many, many things, but one of the things he definitely was a storyteller. But sometimes he told stories about himself. Obviously, a lot of them were about himself. But this one in particular, and we kind of talked about this a little bit last night, and I found out that it was Hurricane Camille. But as Reverend Wright referenced, he spent a lot of time down in Mississippi, and I think that experience just kind of seeped into his pores. There was a folksy, easygoing, kind of Southern quality to him, you know? He was born in New England and went down there, but he brought a little bit of the South back with him. I think you had mentioned Hurricane Camille, and one of those stories is about him sort of braving Hurricane Camille. And in my mind, as a kid, this entailed him being on the beach, surrounded by an igloo of beer cans, and riding out the storm. I mean, at the time when I was a kid, they might not have said beer cans, or he might, because that was the thing. That was, because that's the story that he told you. But it's like thinking now, it's like, well, that's crazy. You're just looking for hurt if you're going to do that in a hurricane. But at the time, it was like, wow, that's cool. I mean, you know, it's like, come on, is that all you got? Bring it on. Hurricane, schmurricane. So, anyhow. And as has been referenced several times before, his friendship with Jimmy Buffett just put him sort of in another cool stratosphere for me. I mean, the thing is that he knew Jimmy Buffett before Jimmy Buffett was Jimmy Buffett. I mean, he hung out with this guy. He partied with this guy. And especially in the mind of a kid, it's like, wow. And then when things completely blew up for Jimmy Buffett, like in the mid-'80s or whenever Margaritaville came out, it was like, there was this sort of little smugness. You know, oh yeah, my uncle knows him. felt good, felt really good. I can make a case that in some ways, I mean, I would probably be here regardless, but I might not have come to New Hampshire in the summer of '88 if not for Uncle Bob and for Jerry, because they were, and Judy, and because they were living up here and made a decision to come up here for the summer, and I never left. And so that sort of rolling things out to where we are right now in this moment, I would not be married to Lynn, and I would not have two incredible, amazing children. And that's completely unfathomable to me. So thanks, Uncle Bob. You know, so I lived up here in New Hampshire, and there were periods of time where we didn't really see each other a whole lot. I mean, we just got involved in our own lives. But I always knew that, you know, if something really happened, if I was in a really tough spot, that he would be there, that he would have my back. Just one more story, and I think that it speaks to my dad, his relationship with Uncle Bob. Just a little, again, sort of a little a little snapshot of their lives. I mean, there was so much more to Dad and Uncle Bob's relationship. They had so much fun and loved each other. But I think that this was a story that Grammy told. And it's basically that, for whatever reason, Uncle Bob sort of had a propensity for getting into trouble. And often it was with, when he was growing up, it seemed to be with kids that were a little bit bigger and a little bit older than him. And also that had the very real potential of just beating the snot out of him. But as a way to try to get out of that, I think one of the things that he often would say to them is, you better not do that, or I'm going to have my brother come down and tell you what's what. And the reality is, I think that Uncle Bob actually had Dad come down. That actually happened. Sometimes Dad had to come in and clean up Uncle Bob's mess. That's how it happened. So, but that speaks to the relationship that they had. It was a tight one. And I mean, it was just the two of them. Brothers in arms. And, you know, there was some rough times. They went through some rough patches together as a family, but they always had each other. They always had each other's back. So anyhow, like I said, it's very hard to put into just, you know, how long I've been up here, that living, dynamic presence that Uncle Bob was, and that twinkle in his eye, which will never go out. It will never go out. Thank you.
Now we have Carl Stanley.
So those words are pretty hard to follow, but we didn't really coordinate what we were going to say. So, but I did want to say that one thing that I have done, in true Uncle Bob fashion, I have no script. I have nothing in front of me. I am strictly winging it. So, but you know, when I was asked whether I wanted to speak, it's just I felt compelled because of just the impact that he had on me, and that goes back to when we were kids, really. Because unlike Eric, I went to school in the Midwest, stayed in the Midwest, and was not able to get out. It just we always tried to work it out, right, Jerry? It just never seemed to work from a scheduling perspective. But I'm going to go back and share a couple of stories from when we were kids, and sort of the impact that he had, you know, on me. So the first is my birthday is around Thanksgiving, and we every year would head up to Connecticut, where my grandmother and grandfather were, and you know, Uncle Bob and family would come down, and I was so excited because we would head over to Norwich Free Academy and had our own little football game. And he dubbed it the Toilet Bowl, and it was just so fun. But what I often think about is I have two older brothers, and of course, I wanted to show them up because I'm the younger one. And it sort of gave me that competitive spirit that certainly, you know, continued through the rest of my life. But, you know, one of the things that Eric said, which is so true, is Uncle Bob was the cool guy. He really was. And as a testament to that, and I don't even think Mom and Dad remember this, but it's ingrained in my head, you know how you have the assignment that's done in school where you're asked of what you want to be when you grow up? And most kids say fireman, policeman, doctor. Well, you know what I wanted to be? I wanted to be an insurance agent. And this is a true story. It is. And I remember seeing on the sheet, like the teacher's like, that's an interesting choice. So, and this is true. I'm not kidding. So, the last thing I wanted to share was really about camp. Every summer for a number of years, we went up to Lake Champlain, and I still don't know how you, Dad, and Uncle Bob managed to close the camp and the things that were required, you know, like moving a boat onto this hill, and, you know, a bunch of scrawny kids helping you out. Still amazing. But we had such great times, something I will never forget, sitting around the campfire or, you know, just spending time as a family. But Eric mentioned this, and I just have to mention it too. And that is, this is tough for me, but I've never seen my dad as happy as he was when he was with Uncle Bob. And I will never, ever forget that. And it's something that, you know, I think about my own brothers and my own family, that relationship just was unsurpassed. And it's a model that I certainly think about often and, you know, passing on to my own kids. So I love you, Uncle Bob. I'll miss you. But I know you're waiting up there so we can resume our football game or whatever we're going to do. So thank you.
Fran Benally.
So I wrote probably 1,000 different speeches for this. And for those of you that know me, you know I am a very picky movie watcher. I will watch 10 minutes of a movie, say this is boring, and never continue, right? But I do actually like the Cars series. And I really like the third movie in that series because Lightning's in a slump, and his former coach had passed away, and he met his former coach's coach, and that person said winning all those championships was not Doc Hudson's best moment of his life. It was meeting you, right? So I have this ring that closely resembles Coach Stanley's ring. And I used to think that going undefeated and winning that championship was the best moment of my life because my graduation at New Hampton, I had lost my ID the night before and needed to get on a plane, was half awake. So I couldn't really claim that. And then, yes, I played 4 years of football at my college, but a spineless administration there abandoned the students in times of crises. So I can't really claim that either. But what's really important is that the best moment of my life was meeting a lot of the people I did in the New Hampton football organization. So I came from a loving mother, but a mentally unwell father and a brother that had a lot of issues. My mom was in over her head, and so while, yes, I was a full tuition student, I came up to New Hampton running. And, you know, I was a massive tornado of issues. I was sort of a stray. And I had really long hair and needed a haircut. And, you know, yeah, I was a good kid, but I was this scrappy little twig from New York City that needed a lot of guidance. I had no business playing on the offensive line or playing football at all. And I was really immature and sarcastic. But Coach Stanley was a core believer in what New Hampton football stands for. And it's not, you know, it doesn't matter if you're the guy going D1 next fall or the guy that came fresh off a plane from another country and is learning this for the first time. You were all family. And from someone that, yes, had loving family members, but didn't have any stability at home, you know, I needed to be loved. And Coach Stanley always believed in me. I went from having a 2.3 GPA in high school to getting my master's at Boston College right now in sports administration. I work full-time in MIT's athletic department, and hopefully someday I will become Dr. Finale. But it all started here. It all started because people like Coach Stanley, Coach Marcella, Coach Manser, a lot of my teammates' families saw that I was this stray runner that honestly just needed to be loved. And I'm not one of those people that believes everyone should get a trophy. Winning a championship was still a very important part of my life, but it's much smaller than meeting all the amazing people I did meet, like Coach Stanley. Thank you. Go Huskies, New Hampshire forever.
Thank you all for your wonderful sharings. And now we'll just take a personal moment. Just pause together, gather our individual feelings and thoughts to meditate upon the meaning of this occasion, to offer a prayer, and most of all, to remember, each in our own private ways, the person Bob was and the many and varied ways his life touched our lives. In silence, we enter a quiet and personal time. Amen, and blessed be Bob. Now we'll sing a song, perhaps Love. The words are found in your order of worship. You're invited to stand if you wish. So death has brought us together this morning, the death of Bob Stanley. Yes, and also no. Life has gathered us too. Life channeled through Bob. And love, life's purest expression, which survives even death, has gathered us. Love for Bob and all those who mourn Bob's death the most. Such love opens life to us. This moment is filled with what meaning we have brought to it, through our shared grief and through our concerns and love for one another. In Bob's death, we have found one another and have found the blessed healing that we can do for one another. And now a moment of meditation. We give thanks for the life of Bob Stanley. We remember him as the person he was, though we can only know a portion of his world. He lives on through all he touched, the common life of which we are all a part. He especially lives on through those whose lives are intertwined with his life. We remember those who love Bob the most and feel his loss the most. Jerry, Stacy, Robin, Matthew, his grandchildren, his brother Gene and Gene's wife Lois and their sons, and all of those who were coached by him. And now as we say a final farewell to one we hold dear, let us be comforted and trusting that a human life is full of meaning and purpose, even in death. For a human life is sacred. It is sacred in its being born, it is sacred in its living, and it is sacred in its dying. Please rise as you are able so we may stand together as we conclude this service of remembrance and celebration, a service of sorrow and joy for the life of Bob Stanley. We extinguish our chalice in honor of Bob. Spirit of life, be with us, giving us peace, the peace of acceptance and understanding, and the insurance in those things that never die, those things that pass from person to person through the generations into eternity, especially love. In the spirit of love, we have gathered. In the spirit of love, we depart. And for our postlude, we want to end this service with one of Bob's loves, his longtime love of life and the adventure of being a cowboy. We want to celebrate that love. So join us now in singing softly, Home, Home on the Range. So I want to thank Noelle Baudin for her beautiful music for our service. And I now invite you to go downstairs for a luncheon.